How World War II soldiers turned trash into tools that changed the war forever. When the world was on fire and steel was worth more than gold, the engineers of World War II became magicians. They didn't just build machines. They rebuilt reality. With supply lines collapsing, factories bombed, and materials rationed to the last bolt, survival demanded more than courage. It demanded creation. Out of twisted scrap, empty tin cans, and rusted wire, soldiers and mechanics forged the impossible: tools, weapons, heaters, stoves, and life-saving devices that kept entire armies moving. These weren't luxury gadgets. They were raw, rugged, and born from desperation. And yet they worked so well that modern survivalists are still trying to copy them today. By the middle of the war, steel and copper were rationed tighter than food. Every factory in Britain, America, and the Axis nations was stripped bare for weapons production. Soldiers in the field couldn't wait for new equipment to arrive. They had to improvise, so they turned to what was around them: the ruins, the wreckage, the leftover tin from food cans, and the twisted remains of destroyed vehicles. Military engineers and battlefield mechanics became the quiet heroes of the front lines. They turned broken tanks into forges, old helmets became cooking pots, oil drums turned into field stoves. Even downed aircraft aluminum was hammered into tools and spare parts. Nothing was wasted. If it could be bent, burned, or bolted, it had value. This was survival engineering at its finest: fast, brutal, and beautifully effective. One of the most ingenious survival hacks came from the humblest object on the battlefield: the tin can. Soldiers used them for everything. They'd punch holes in the sides to create makeshift stoves called buddy burners, fueled with a rag soaked in grease. With just that, they could heat food, melt snow for water, or even warm their hands in frozen trenches. Cans also became lamps, water filters, and signal devices. In some fronts, medics used sterilized cans to boil medical tools or to carry precious fuel. The same can that once held soup could later save a soldier's life. What made these hacks extraordinary wasn't the material. It was the mindset. These soldiers were trained to adapt, not wait. Every piece of trash was a potential solution. That mindset, transformed the tide of survival and innovation. Behind every front was a small miracle: the field workshop. These makeshift garages, often just tents or dugouts, became hubs of invention. Engineers with grease-stained hands and barely any tools fixed everything from broken tank tracks to downed radio sets using only scavenged parts. They'd melt down shell casings to make bolts, reshape truck springs into wrenches, or cut up damaged armor to patch vehicles. Some even turned wrecked aircraft engines into generators to power entire camps. It was rough, dirty work, but it kept the war machines alive. One British unit in North Africa famously turned a pile of enemy scrap metal into a fleet of working trucks welding and hammering through the night while sandstorms howled outside. Those trucks would later carry vital supplies through territory the enemy thought was impassable. That's the magic of field engineering, turning nothing into something that works. When ammunition ran low or weapons failed, soldiers didn't surrender. They built their own. Engineers crafted pipe guns from scrap tubing, flamethrowers from fuel tanks, and grenades from tin cans filled with nails and explosive powder. In the Pacific, American GIs built makeshift mortars from old plumbing pipes. In Europe, resistance fighters built booby traps and sabotage tools from discarded scrap. These weren't crude toys. They were deadly, effective, and often indistinguishable from standard issue. Every improvised weapon carried a signature: the human will to fight back with whatever was left. In a world reduced to rubble, even junk metal became a weapon of freedom. In the freezing winters of Europe and Asia, survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about staying alive through the cold. Soldiers built makeshift heaters from fuel cans, fitting them with air vents and crude chimneys made from pipes or shell casings. These contraptions, often called trench stoves, could warm a shelter and dry soaked uniforms. Some even added flat tops to cook on. The designs spread quickly across armies because they worked. They burned anything: wood, grease, diesel, even scraps of rubber. This wasn't luxury. It was survival engineering that kept frostbite and death at bay. What made these wartime innovations special wasn't just the result, it was the philosophy behind them. Every battlefield fix, every welded stove or makeshift wrench was a symbol of human ingenuity under fire. World War II proved that innovation doesn't need perfect tools. It needs desperate minds. It taught generations of engineers that limitations aren't roadblocks, they're invitations. When resources ran out, creativity took over. That's the essence of survival, turning what you have into what you need. Even today, the lessons of those battlefield engineers live on. Modern survivalists, preppers, and off-grid builders still borrow from their methods. The same tin can stoves, the same scrap metal tools, they're timeless. Because when the world falls apart, it's not about having everything. It's about making something out of anything. Look closely at the world now. Energy shortages, economic uncertainty, disrupted supply chains. Sound familiar? The lessons from World War II are whispering to us again. Resourcefulness, adaptation, innovation without luxury. Those engineers didn't just survive, they redefined survival. They proved that genius doesn't come from abundance. It comes from scarcity. You don't need a factory to create, just a problem and the will to solve it. The next time you look at a pile of junk or an empty can, remember that's not trash, that's potential, the same kind that helped win a world war. In the end, what made those engineers remarkable wasn't their tools. It was their vision. They saw opportunity where others saw ruin. They turned broken things into hope, and through that, they changed history. That's the real legacy of World War II's scrap metal innovators. Proof that survival isn't about what you have, but what you can make. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe to Wisdom from the Frontlines for more hidden lessons from history, where ingenuity, grit, and survival still echo louder than ever. Share this with someone who believes that limits are just challenges waiting to be conquered.